I have to start by asking you honestly, was I the villain here? Because when I finally told them no, their faces went white, then crimson, and my father actually slammed his hand on the table, yelling that I was a selfish, ungrateful child. But I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Where was this generosity when I was trying to pay for my tuition, Dad?" It was the worst family dinner of my life, the kind of confrontation that shatters a family bond completely, and it all boiled down to $65,000 for a wedding I had absolutely zero intention of funding. Tell me honestly, when your parents show clear favoritism and then treat you like an ATM, would you have opened your wallet? That's what this whole story is about. To truly understand why I reached the point of walking away from my own sister's wedding financial plea, you have to go back about 10 years to when I was 17 and gearing up for college applications. My parents, successful in their respective fields, my father a senior manager at a logistics firm, my mother a dentist, always maintained the facade of a perfect, middle-class, financially comfortable family. They were always very clear about one thing: they would fund our education. My younger sister, Clara, and I grew up with this promise echoing in every conversation about the future. I was a good student, straight A's, captain of the debate team, got into my dream university, a prestigious, private institution with a steep tuition, but the name, recognition I felt I needed. I remember coming home, waving the acceptance letter, so proud, and my parents were proud too, for a day. Then we sat down to talk money. That's when the promise started to crumble. My father, with a grim face, pulled out a ledger, showing me their retirement savings, the mortgage payments, and some vague investment losses. He said, and I quote, "We just can't manage the full tuition, sweetie. It's too high. We'll help with the first year, maybe a little more, but you're going to have to take out loans for the rest. Or consider a state school." The shock was physical. Clara, who was 14 at the time, sat quietly next to him, and I felt this immediate sense of betrayal. They could afford it. I knew they could. My dad had just bought a brand new luxury SUV, and my mom got an extravagant facelift the year before. But they were deciding not to, at least not for me. I cried that night, a lot, but I'm a fighter. I took out the loans, massive ones, the kind that hang over your entire 20s like a financial cloud. And I worked 3 part-time jobs all through college. I graduated with honors, but also with a crushing $80,000 in student debt. My parents gave me a congratulatory dinner and a $50 gift card to a bookstore. They never once offered to help pay off the debt, claiming I was learning the value of a dollar. Fast forward 8 years. I'm 30, a successful software engineer, finally making enough money to chip away at those loans and even save for a down payment on a small condo. I live simply. I budget aggressively. I learned the value of a dollar all right, but not the way they intended. I learned the value of not relying on their empty promises. Meanwhile, Clara's life unfolded differently. She went to a local state school, nothing wrong with that, but she also lived at home rent-free, had her tuition paid for entirely by my parents. Funny how the investment losses were suddenly resolved for her, and had a generous monthly allowance. She majored in an abstract art history program, which she loved, but which didn't exactly lead to a 6-figure salary. She graduated with 0 debt and moved back into the family home, working part-time at a gallery. My parents celebrated her graduation with a massive party and a brand new car. The double standard was a bitter pill I'd learned to swallow. I minimized contact, focusing on my own life, only attending mandatory family gatherings. Then Clara got engaged. Her fiancé, Mark, is a good guy, but his family is incredibly wealthy and a little pretentious. They immediately started planning a wedding that was, frankly, obscene. It wasn't a wedding, it was a societal declaration. A destination wedding in Italy, specifically Tuscany, with a minimum of 150 guests, a 5-course meal, and a designer dress that cost more than my entire first year of tuition. The initial estimates were astronomical, well over €100,000. Mark's family agreed to cover half, being the generous hosts, but Clara and my parents were expected to cover the other half. And that's where I entered the picture, as the unexpected, unwilling funder. My parents, having spent their available cash on Clara's car and allowance, and perhaps not being as financially secure as they pretended, started dropping hints to me, the successful, debt-free, mostly sibling. The hints started small. "Isn't it amazing how well you're doing, honey?" Or, "A wedding is a family effort, isn't it?" The actual, formal ask happened over that awful dinner I mentioned at the start. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. My father cleared his throat after a lengthy speech about family bonds and how happy Clara was, and then he just dropped the bomb. "We need your help with the wedding. The total is $130,000, and Mark's parents are covering $65,000. We can only comfortably afford $30,000, so we need you to contribute the remaining $35,000. I remember just staring at the pasta on my plate, a piece of fettuccine suddenly feeling like a massive, coiled snake. $35,000. That was my condo down payment fund, the money I had sacrificed years of holidays and decent cars for. Clara piped up, all sweet innocence. "It would just mean so much to me, sis, and you can afford it. Think of the beautiful photos." My mother smiled supportively, acting like this was a completely reasonable request to make of their eldest child who they had forced into crippling debt. My immediate response was a choked, "Are you serious?" And that's when the argument erupted. I brought up my student loans. I brought up the fact that they paid for Clara's entire education while making me work 3 jobs. I pointed out the sheer extravagance of a Tuscan wedding when a beautiful local wedding could be done for a fraction of the cost. My father cut me off, saying, "That's in the past. You're financially stable now. Clara needs this. This is her one day. You're being petty and selfish to hold on to old grievances." Selfish. That word stung more than the $35,000 request. They saw my struggle and success not as a point of pride, but as a financial resource they were entitled to tap. I was still their asset, not their daughter. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. They were leveraging my sister's happiness and the concept of family duty against my personal financial security, all while ignoring a decade of financial inequality they had created. I was tired of being the responsible one who got penalized for my responsibility. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have gritted your teeth, written the check for the sake of peace and family, or would you have drawn a hard line and risked shattering the relationship? Let me know your honest thoughts, because it was the hardest decision I ever had to make. I took a deep breath, and the cold clarity that settled over me was terrifying. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect and the principle of the matter. I looked at Clara, whose eyes were starting to well up with manipulative tears, and then at my parents, whose faces were a mixture of entitlement and annoyance. "No," I said, firmly and clearly. "I will not give you $35,000. I won't even give you $5. I am not funding a lavish wedding in Italy when I am still paying off the student loans you promised you would help me with and then abandoned me too. You chose to fund Clara's life of leisure, and I was forced to fund my own education. That was your choice. This is mine. I will give you a wedding present. A nice one, a toaster, a kitchen aid mixer, whatever they register for. But I am not your personal bank, and I refuse to enable this level of irresponsible extravagance. The ensuing explosion was like a scene from a movie. My father's slamming of the hand, the screaming about ingratitude, my mother's quiet, devastatingly manipulative tears. Clara actually stood up and called me a bitter, miserable spinster who was jealous of her happiness. I didn't yell. I just stood up, picked up my coat and bag, and said one last thing. The wedding is 2 months away. I hope you figure out how to pay for your half. Do not call me until you are ready to apologize for the last 10 years, not just for tonight. And then I walked out the door and drove home. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. A week of silence, followed by a torrent of angry guilt, tripping texts from my mother. Your father is so stressed. Clara is heartbroken. How can you do this to your own sister? I blocked their numbers for a few days just to have peace. When I finally unblocked them, I responded to their collective messages with one simple, professional email. I understand you are disappointed in my decision. My decision is final. I will see you at the wedding ceremony. Further attempts to guilt or pressure me will result in me not attending the wedding at all. It was a cold, necessary boundary. The wedding, as it turned out, did not happen in Tuscany. My parents, in a frantic scramble, were forced to beg Mark's family to reduce the budget and find a local venue. They ended up having a nice, but significantly less extravagant, wedding at a beautiful historic mansion near my parents' home. The final cost was cut in half, and Mark's family footed most of the remaining bill. My parents were financially tapped out and utterly humiliated in front of their wealthy in-laws. I went to the wedding, I watched my sister get married, and I genuinely wished her well. I gave them a very nice, expensive kitchen aid mixer. My parents were frosty, barely speaking to me, and Clara maintained a stiff upper lip. But the air was thick with unspoken resentment and the clear understanding that I was no longer under their control. Years later, I own my condo, the loans are nearly gone, and my relationship with my family is permanently damaged, but oddly more honest. They know I have a backbone now. They know I won't be manipulated. They never asked me for a large sum of money again. Clara and I have a fragile truce. She finally seems to understand, dimly, that my resistance wasn't about her asterisk, but about our parents' unequal treatment. The moral of the story, for me, is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is say no, even to the people who raised you. The resentment of enabling bad behavior would have cost me more than the $35. It would have cost me my self-respect. So, that's the whole mess. I sacrificed a smooth family life for financial independence and self-respect. Was it worth it? I think so. If you've ever been the black sheep, the one who was overlooked but then expected to carry the burden, I want to hear your story. Like this video if you were on my side and think I did the right thing by putting my foot down. Subscribe for more stories like this, where I dive into the worst of the online drama, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Should I have given them the money just for peace? I'll see you all in the next story.